Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, a conversation about fashion, masculinity, mental health, and wellness for men. My guest is on a mission to tackle all of the above and so much more. He is a model, he's a creator, and author of the NAACP Image Award nominated book, Notoriously Dapper: How to Be a Modern Gentleman. Tonight, my guest is Kelvin Davis. Kelvin, thank you so much for joining this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sure thing. But before we talk about you and before we talk about the books, I want to share just a few what we call fast facts. A Pew Research study has found that 25% of Americans say they have mostly negative views of men who are manly or masculine. And 6 in 10 say Americans don't place enough value on men who are caring or open about their emotions. About 4 in 10 men, 42%, see themselves as highly masculine. And 6 in 10 Americans find certain behaviors that could be associated with toxic masculinity to be unacceptable. What inspired you to explore these topics of men's health, masculinity, and wellness in your work? And let me ask you this, because I think this is really important. How old are you?
I am 37.
37. So
yes.
You're still a young cat.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Don't excuse the gray, but
yeah,
you're nowhere near 40 yet.
Yeah.
So what made you want to explore these topics?
I would say, so prior to me being in this field, I was a middle school art teacher for 8 years. And during my middle school art teaching days, whenever I started teaching, I also started coaching, right? And being the head football coach at this school and being an art teacher, it was a juxtaposition in a way, right? Because there's a lot of coaches that necessarily aren't art teachers, like they don't do the creative thing. So what I noticed with a lot of my male students was that a lot of them lacked the ability to really feel what they felt, right? A lot of them would just turn their fear into anger. They would turn their embarrassment into anger. And a lot of these things would transform into violence. So I started thinking back to when I was a kid and how I used to feel embarrassed, fear and all these things. And it would come out as anger. And that's where I think the toxic masculinity comes from, is because a lot of men, especially, are not in tune with they just don't know how they feel, right? A lot of them just transform it into anger. So what I started to notice is that a lot of my students, whenever I would speak to them and try to get them to dig deep, the ultimate emotion they were feeling was fear, embarrassment, and sadness. Anger was on the last part, but it all came out as anger. So I knew when I wrote this book that this book was not only about etiquette, about lifestyles, about style tips, but I knew everything I brought in this classroom had to be put in this book. So it's essentially the same thing I would do with these middle school art kids. I would just put that inside of a book. So, the rest of the world can have it, because not everybody has a good male figure in their life that can talk to them face to face and get on their level and really try to understand how they feel.
What would you say is the difference between masculinity and toxic masculinity?
Okay, I feel like masculinity is when a man is in tune with his masculine traits, right? The typical masculine traits are being a protector, being a provider, and being stoic and not being as emotional, being more logical in a sense, right? Toxic masculinity to me is when you take those traits and you make it your whole entire personality, and you don't leave any room for growth. You don't leave any room for balance. You don't leave any room for in anything. And I feel like with toxic masculinity, it is hard for a father to be a good father to daughters if you are toxic, right? So for me, I have two girls, and what's helped
Mm,
me in my years was that I have these two girls that I have to talk to differently than I talk to the younger boys that I used to coach to. I can't talk to them in the same way. It's not going to come across, and it's not going to come in the way that I want it to, right? I can't tell my daughter, hey, you need to go do these dishes. It doesn't come off in that way. It comes off as dad. It just comes up. It comes off as dad being angry, dad being mad. But if I say, hey, Temperance, can you go do these dishes for me? Daddy has a call that he has to go do. It's no problem, right? So I
mhm,
feel like a lot of guys don't leave room for balance and they don't leave room for growth. And that's what creates toxic masculinity, is that they just don't have any room for it. And it's tragic.
mm. Well, I have a daughter.
Yeah.
She's 26, and so I think I do, understand the tone and tenor that a father would speak to their daughter under the best circumstances, as opposed to how they may feel they need to perhaps speak to their son. But with two daughters, what is it that they are teaching you in your dive into masculinity?
They are teaching me to be vulnerable. I would tell you, obviously, all of us as men, we obviously cry, right? I've cried numerous times in my life. But a lot of the times when I cry alone. I cried
Mhm.
by myself. I'll cry in my car. I'll cry, when nobody else is around, right? A lot of men rarely cry in the public eye, especially around people that are close to them, right? So for me, a vulnerable moment for me was when me and my ex-wife, we decided to separate in 2021, and our divorce was finalized in 2024. And I remember sitting both of my daughters down, telling them that, me and your mother are no longer going to be together. And my youngest daughter, at the time, she was 6. And she asked me, so does this mean that you're not going to be able to play with me anymore every day? And what got me was that, kids are not only smart, but they're very intelligent whenever it comes with what they feel and what's important to them. And they ask it.
Mhm.
So when she asked me that, I realized how important it was for her, for me to be in that house every day, for me to play with her when she came home from school. And it broke me down. I cried in front of her and my oldest daughter. And, I was honestly expecting them to, be like, why is dad crying? Like, this is weird. But they came and they hugged me and they consoled me and told me everything was going to be fine. And that's not your kid's job, right? Like, that's not your kid's job to console you and to check up on you. And I wasn't expecting that in any way. And that's why as parents, a lot of the times we're more reserved when we show our vulnerable sides, because we don't want to put the pressure on our kids to feel like they have to monitor our reactions, right? Like,
Mhm.
so we like we move more stoic, we move more quiet, but kids are very smart and they know you, and they know when you're sad, they know when you're angry, they know when there's something bothering you. So it was really a big eye opener for me to know that both of my daughters, they not only know me, but they know me well enough to know that if dad is quiet, this long, something's bothering them. There's something on his mind. Let's try to have some fun with them. So they're really good about just knowing that, and they're really good at telling me that I can be vulnerable, because a lot of the
Mhm.
times I just felt like I couldn't, because obviously I'm a man, and then obviously you have the other part of being a parent, that you don't want to show that side of you because you don't want your kids to feel like it's their responsibility.
Let's talk a little bit about health, because this
Okay.
is also something else that you address as it relates to men, particularly Black men, and misconceptions about health, particularly around diabetes and weight management?
Yeah. So I got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in February of 2021. And for me, it was just an ordinary doctor's checkup. I didn't have any symptoms or signs. I didn't have any frequent urination. I wasn't like thirsty. I didn't have the typical signs of what a type 2 diabetic has. So I had no idea. So I went in, got my blood work done. A doctor calls me a couple of days later. Hey, you need to come back in. We need to talk to you. Come in. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh Lord, what happened?
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a good dude. Like I'm not sleeping around on my wife. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not doing that crazy. You know. So he was like, you have type 2 diabetes, and your A1C is 13, which your A1C is supposed to be anywhere between 4.5 and 5.6. Anything over
Mhm.
that is pre-diabetic, and then over 10, you're technically supposed to be in a diabetic coma. So he looked at me and was like, I don't know how you're sitting here talking to me with a 13 A1C. You're supposed to be in a diabetic coma. I was like, excuse me? So that shook my world, because I'm like, what shook me was that I felt fine. I didn't feel like I had diabetes, if that makes sense, right? So I didn't realize how bad I felt until I got healthier. Whenever I started to, change my diet, exercise more, and when you do that, you just automatically lose weight. I started to realize, I moved out. See, me and my wife separated April 2021. So then I moved out in May of 2021. And that was my first time living alone. I had this
Mhm.
new, I have this new illness I'm dealing with. I'm like dealing with the separation of my wife. I'm dealing with not seeing my kids every day. I'm dealing with all this, especially living alone, right? For the first time. I
Right.
was like, I'm living alone. There's nobody here. So I said, you know what? Nobody's going to come and save me. I got to change my diet. I got to change my life. I got to exercise more. And by August of 2021, I had gone for another checkup, and my A1C had dropped from 13 to 6.5 in
Wow,
those
that's huge.
in those 3 months. And then I started to realize, hey, I can do this naturally. I don't need to continue to take this medication. So I withdrew from the medication at the time, and I started to just do it all naturally. And it worked out. And it's 2025 now, and I've been able to keep my A1C at any. Okay, and it worked out for me. So, now when I got my A1C checked, I've been able to keep it in between 5.5 and 5.6, right? So it's been able for me to have that, diet and exercise regimen. I have been able to naturally, you know, basically technically reverse my type 2 diabetes. But, when we say reverse it in the medical world, it's temporary, right? Because if
Right.
I
It's not a
slip up,
cure.
it's,
It's
it's,
not,
it's
it's
not
not a
cured.
cure. It's being managed.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I were to slip up and continue to go back to the way I was eating and not the exercising, I could easily go back to the same weight and to the same unhealthiness that I was. But what I found fascinating was that I didn't realize how bad I felt until I started to feel good. I was like,
Wow.
I really felt bad. But at that time, I felt normal. I felt fine because I was so used to feeling bad.
Hold that point, Kelvin, because I
Yeah.
do need to take a quick break.
Okay, sure.
Don't forget, you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM, channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM, channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation with Kelvin Davis, model, creator, and author of the NAACP Image Award nominated book, Notoriously Dapper: How to Be a Modern Gentleman. I will say, as we were discussing before the break, I'm glad that you are not only feeling better, but are better, because certainly it is important that Black men really focus on their health. What do you believe is the issue that they are struggling with the most, or issues that they are struggling with the most?
I think the main issue is that unfortunately, a lot of people in the Black community live in food deserts, right?
Hmm.
And they're not able to go and get healthy foods. They're not able to get adequate health care, all these different things, right? What was a benefit to me was that when I went to the doctor, I was able to get into our diabetes education class and do all these
Oh,
different things, right? So these things are things that a lot of people just sometimes don't have the resources to actually get. So when I talk about this, I encourage people, especially Black men, to go to the doctor. It's okay to get checkups done. A lot of Black men, you know, in their older age, they just continue going through life. They work, they go home, they go to sleep, they eat, work, go home, and go to sleep. And there's this no this is no time for them to go to the doctor, let alone go to the gym or focus on what they're eating, right? And it's just tragic to me because obviously it's very uh, systemic, obviously based off of the way America has programmed our communities, the way the current political climate is now, the way everything is now, right? So it's like you have a lot of Black and brown people that just don't have access to healthy food and good quality healthcare.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and to that point, and I think it's so important, certainly there may be food deserts, there also may be uh, poor access to health, and that often creates an additional barrier. But for those men who have insurance,
yeah,
I always say, if you have insurance, use it, because you are paying for it every time you get your paycheck, every 2 weeks or every week, or however long. And insurance is expensive.
for
And
sure.
so you should definitely take the time, if you have medical insurance, to get the checkups, to go to the dentist, to have your eyes checked, and have the blood work done. And
Yeah,
but as you said, yes, it is a little difficult sometimes, to get them to cross that bridge with all of the responsibilities that they feel that they are having to respond to.
of
Let's
course.
talk a little bit about your book. Uh, First of all, what was it like to be nominated for an NAACP Image Award?
It was awesome. Honestly, I think it was the first, I'd probably be the first and only time me and Oprah's name will ever be mentioned in a sentence ever. Ever. You know what I mean? I don't think my name will ever be mentioned with her name ever again. But I really enjoyed it while it was there. So but it was awesome. To just to have that to have that acknowledgement, especially from, it's especially from the Black community. It meant even more to me because this book was, for young Black and brown boys. I like wanted this book to reach them so it could give them real life advice about etiquette, style, and how to move in this world, especially as a young Black man. So,
Mm.
it was amazing to me that, a group of elders and superiors read this book and they were like, you know what, this deserves to be nominated for outstanding literary work of 2017. I was like, okay, yeah,
Okay.
that was an amazing email to get. I tell you, I was on cloud nine.
Mm. You talk about how to be a modern gentleman. Define that.
So so back in the day, a gentleman was somebody that the world, especially in America, they just perceived as dressing nice and somebody that was a well-known person in their area, right? Back then, you could be a gentleman, still be racist, beat your wife, do all kinds of criminal acts, terrible things, right? And people just deemed you a gentleman based off of how they saw you whenever you were out and about. I wanted to change the definition of what a gentleman was and make it a modern version, because nowadays being a gentleman isn't necessarily about, it's more about who you are inside than what you are on the outside. There's a lot of people that wear suits, as we know, that are not gentlemen in any way. There's a lot of people that wear suits every single day and do the most heinous things that we've probably could ever imagine ever be done to this country, right?
Mhm.
So what I tell people honestly is that I've met more gentlemen in sweatsuits than I have in actual dress suits, and that's the truth. Because what it boils down to is your character, it boils down to your morals, and it boils down into your integrity and what you stand for. And me personally, I have met more people that have had the same views as me, that wear streetwear, like, jogging suits or jean jackets and all this stuff, instead of wearing a full blown suit. So I wanted to get that notion out of the way, that just because a guy is in a suit and a tie and he looks nice doesn't necessarily mean he's a gentleman, because he can be not the nicest guy. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on here or
No,
not.
no,
So
we prefer not, but
okay. I'm not.
we
I'm not. I'm not.
appreciate
I'm
it.
not. I'm not. Okay. So but they definitely, looks can be very deceiving, and I tell both of my daughters that too. That whenever, because my my oldest is 14 now, so she's looking at boys. You know what I'm saying? I'm not dumb, right? So, but it's my responsibility as her father to make sure she vets and make sure she knows the difference in between what a good man is and what a bad man is, and what a
Yeah,
gentleman is and what not a gentleman is. Yeah.
and I think this brings me to the next point about manners, etiquette, and the like. When it comes to black men, where do you believe we are when it comes to that issue?
We're struggling a little bit. I'm going to be honest with you. We have especially the young kids. We have a culture that's built where a lot of kids that are, you know, I would say the ages 25 and lower, what the internet deems them as YNs is what they call them. YNs is like young.
Youngin,
Yeah,
youngins.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So,
It took me a minute, but I got it.
yeah. So the internet deems them this like term, right? And this term is really associated with, you know, a young group of black men that necessarily, don't move with poise. They don't move with honor. They don't move with, grace and, all these things. And I feel like, as a community, as a culture, even in the black culture too, is just in general, a lot of people don't appreciate good men until you need a good man. I don't know if that makes
Explain
sense or
that.
not, but a lot, but I feel like there's a lot of people that move throughout day to day, and they interact with people. Sometimes they date someone that necessarily isn't the best for them, right? And they don't realize that they need a good man until that person is gone, right, out of their life. And what I mean by that, like, let's just say, for instance, a girl is dating a guy, and he's very quote unquote toxic, right? He's very abusive. He yells at her. He does all these things, but that's all she's used to. That's all she's used to, right? Now, when she finally gets the courage to leave, or he leaves her, and she encounters a guy that's the exact opposite, quote unquote, good man. It's kind of like, why is this guy so nice? Why is this guy good? Like, why is he not yelling at me? Why is he so understanding? Why does he open up doors? What does he want from me? Do you know what I mean? So we have this culture that's being built where if a if 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 a young man is nice or kind and good, people automatically think there's something wrong with them. Why? People automatically think, well, he must want something from me. Like, I remember there were times in college where I would open up the like door for a girl, or I would, say to a girl, I like I like your dress, and they would be like, I have a boyfriend. I'm like, I don't really care if you have a boyfriend. I'm just saying you have a nice dress. I can't, like, let's say people can't give compliments. They can't just be good, kind humans without people thinking that they want something in return. And it's
Well,
sad.
I will inform you that it's just not the young guys.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
There are the old guys, the not so youngins, or the not youngins at all, where there seems to be a deficit when it comes to manners.
For sure.
And etiquette and manners are two sides of the same coin. You may not necessarily be proficient in etiquette, but manners are foundational.
Yeah.
Based on the sisters that I've spoken to on this program, and even out in the public square, that yes, I think that you are quite right, that they do not encounter a lot of brothers who seem to have manners and are not necessarily willing, if it is brought up. And on the other side, and like you said, those women who may not necessarily have had an opportunity to be exposed to that are not wholly comfortable with being on the receiving end of manners and or etiquette.
Yeah. And like, just like you said, etiquette and manners are like, the same side of the coin, right? So when you have etiquette and manners, I feel like etiquette is a lot more rare than manners are, because I feel like a lot of guys can fake manners, right? But it's really hard to fake etiquette. It's like when you're out on a date, a lot of guys don't know, hey, maybe get out of the car, knock on the girl's door, open up the car door for her, let her in. A lot of guys pull up, beep, beep, I'm here. That's etiquette.
So let me say, I just thought about something. A dear friend of mine told me that she was going out on a first date. This was years ago. This was, a grown woman. And she said her first date with the guy pulled up to her house that she owned. And he beeped, and she didn't answer the door. And although he called her and said, I'm on my way, and he sat out there and, beep, 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 beep. And this went on. And then finally, after 5 minutes, he called her and he said, I told her I was on my way. And she said, yes, I understood. Did you hear me honking my horn? And she said, yes. He said, why didn't you come out? And she said, because I don't respond to horn honks.
Yeah. I mean, that's valid.
And he left, and she was fine with it.
But see, that's crazy. Like, I don't know where we went as a culture to where we think it's okay for somebody to pull up to the house that you own, especially a grown man. Come on now. Like, to pull up at a grown woman's house that she owns and to not get out of the car, knock, hey, I'm here. And, you don't even have to open up the car door for her. Okay, let's say, for instance, if you think that's too much, Like some of these guys think, oh, well, I don't want to do too much, right? If you think opening up the car door for her is too much, at least go to the door, acknowledge that you're here, let her walk with you to the car, get in the car, and then go. That's just crazy. I mean,
And of course, and as we know, a woman will let you know quite quickly if it is too much or not enough.
oh,
So
100%. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
it won't take much to hear from her, because she may stand at the door until you do. And again,
Yeah.
there is the rub. I do want to talk a little bit more about self care.
Hmm.
And I think in the space of mental health, we are seeing a movement in our community, more so with Black women, but particularly with Black men,
Yeah.
where they are trying to address self-care and mental health, even in small ways. How do
For sure.
you do self-care?
I do self care by making sure I fill all of my cup first. So I'm big on filling up my cup before I can fill up anybody else's. Because if I'm drained or if I'm mentally exhausted, I can't give you the best version of me. And I want to give the best version of myself to everybody: my mom, my dad, my daughters, my friends, everybody, right? Even you. Like, I had to make sure I got up, I exercised, I had my shake. I, had my time to meditate and read in my Bible, read some scripture and all that stuff before I got on this call, because I want to give my best self, right? So, however that looks to anybody, I feel like moving your body in some form, like, it looks different for everybody, right? Not everybody's into lifting weights, not everybody's into running sprints and all that stuff, but you have to find something that involves moving your body that works for you, that makes you feel good. Because for me, it's like, you can work out, right? But if you don't feel good after you're done, you defeat the purpose. You want to feel good after you're done working out. You want to feel good, and when you're done feeling good, then you can move on with your day. It's kind of like what Deion Sanders used to say: when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you play good, and when you play good, they pay good. And that's just the recipe for life, right? So I feel as though, especially with men, especially with Black men, you know, us taking care of ourselves and can really help us give 100% of the best version of who we are. And all in all, we will become better teachers, better mentors, better leaders, better fathers, and better pillars of any community that we are in. And it's just, I mean, there's just no way you can lose if you prioritize your mental health. There's no way. You can't
Mhm.
lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that you are doing as it relates to being, a model and addressing self-image. Again, when we look at women who are in the modeling business, there has been a, an acceptance of fuller figure women models. I mean, there was just this huge wave
For sure.
of, and but the thing about men, that has been considerably slower to happen. And so, what
Yes.
is your take on uh, the body positivity for men who are in that same industry?
Yeah. Um, so I feel like there's two things. I feel like the term body positivity gets a bad rep, right? The term body positivity, in a sense, is supposed to be that you're positive about your body. But a lot of people in the outside world take it as people being just okay with you being fat, or just promoting obesity in some kind of way, right? But that's not what it is. And what I've had to do was kind of redefine what body positivity is, especially for the masculine space. Body positivity is not only knowing that you're positive about your body, but it's about doing positive things for your body. I think people get it twisted, and they need to understand that body positivity is for everybody, and that it's very hard for you to be body positive if you are promoting a unhealthy lifestyle.
Mm.
I'm just going to keep it real. People love to say, you can do whatever you want to and eat whatever you want to. No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't. You can't do it. And if you do it, you can't promote it in a way of this is a healthy way to live. And then you can't use the term body positivity as a way of you saying, hey, I'm this much weight and I eat this amount of food every single day, and I don't really care how my body looks because I'm comfortable with it. Okay, that's fine. That's you. But you can't push that agenda on everybody else, because the real world is real and the real world works. Like, if you eat McDonald's, Popeyes, and eat Cheetos and all this fried and all this, highly processed food every single day, you're not body positive. You're not. You're not doing positive things for your body. You're not moving your body. You're not eating fruit. You're not eating vegetables. You're not eating God's food. You're not eating like the natural food that comes from the earth. So that's what I feel like people have switched it up with body positivity. Now, when it comes to modeling, I feel like it's slower for men because a lot of men don't talk with their dollars. Women speak with their money. So
Mm.
brands knew, hey, we have to make these sizes. We have to have this representation, because if we don't, women are not going to shop. Women are not going to go and buy these bags, these shoes, all this stuff. And and women spoke with their money, and brands realized, hey, there's a whole billions of dollars that we're leaving out on the table by not making 2, 3, 4, 5, 6X clothes. Now, for men, obviously we have the big and tall sector, and plus there's this stigma that men don't care how they look, or that men aren't fashionable, or that men don't really care about fashion, right? There's this like stereotype about that. But what I found is that a lot of men do care what they look like. They just don't have the resources to go out. They have, I wouldn't say the resources, they don't have the emotional
Mm.
wherewithal to go out and go shopping and maybe deal with the uncomfortness of an XL not fitting them anymore.
Yeah, yeah, because as they say, everything doesn't look good on everybody.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So I know for me, I started my whole blog from a bad shopping experience. You know, I had just graduated from USC. I had just got my first teaching job. I went to Express, which we all know Express now is filing bankruptcy because they didn't make plus sizes and bigger clothes. So let's
Mm.
just keep that out there. So I went in there to go get a blazer, and it was a red blazer. And I love colorful clothes. So I went in there and I was like, hey, do you guys have this in like a 46, 48? They were like, no, that's our largest size. But their largest size was like a 44 or something. So I tried it on, and it was a slim fit 44, and it
Hmm.
barely went over my shoulders. So I asked the lady, I said, hey, can you look online or anywhere? Like, maybe I can order it offline. And she told me, maybe you're too fat to shop here. You should try the big department store.
Wow.
And that was my first,
Wow.
yes. And that was my first time as a guy being body shamed. Now, I know
Mm.
women have been body shamed a lot their entire life, but especially as a black guy, in a public space being body
Hmm.
shamed by a woman, oh, brother, I was hurt. My
I,
feelings were I'm
I,
serious, like,
yes, I can imagine.
my feelings were hurt. So I was like, I need to create a space for men where fashion can be a top topic, but as well as style tips, as well as body positivity. So when I started this blog, it was about me really helping men of all shapes and sizes feel confident in who they are, and that's how No Horsey Dapper was born.
Hmm.
Essentially, yeah.
I only have a few minutes left. What
Okay.
do you want Black men specifically, but more broadly, Black people to take away from Notoriously Dapper, your book?
what I want them to take away, the most important messaging I want them to take away is that anything that they want to do, it can be done, and it is possible. Because I never thought, and I'm pretty sure a lot of my, well, I know a lot of my teaching colleagues never thought that a 5'10" chubby bald black guy from South Carolina would ever be the face of Target, Gap, Polo, Lululemon, any of these brands, right? So what I want them to look at is, I want them to look at that book as a form of representation of perseverance, of somebody that had certain circumstances that were against them. I am not supposed to be a quote unquote supermodel or model. Like, I physically, if you write down what I look like, 5'10", like 240 something pounds, round face, big nose, dark skin, bald. I'm not supposed to be a model, stereotypically, right? But I bullied my way into the fashion industry. I did not take no for an answer. I said, there are more people that look like me than there are people that look like him on this ad. This guy on the ad, I haven't seen anybody ever in my life look like this guy. There's more people that look like me that walk around every single day. And I feel like people, when they go shopping, they want to see representation. They want to see people that look like them in the clothing. And that's what's going to make them want to spend their money there, right? And another thing I want a lot of young Black boys to take away from my book is that etiquette and manners are not simping. Like, there's this there's this notion that if you do too much, if you're too kind, if you go out of your way, that you are a simp. That's not true. You can be kind, you can be the good man, you can be the good kid and still prosper in this life. Don't worry about what everybody else says, because they are just hating because they don't have the confidence enough to be kind and be good to everybody else.
I think that's a good place to end this conversation. Kelvin Davis, notoriously dapper, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Good luck to you, and hope to see that nomination become an award.
Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. That is the Daily Drum for this Friday, April 11th. For News Director Renee Nash, I'm Harold Fisher.